So, first of all, I want to thank everyone that watched my last video. I really appreciate that. That's the one where I shared my own songs. You know, I've thought about doing that for a long time, and frankly, it's scary to do that. It really is. It's vulnerable to share your own stuff. You know, when you're used to talking about other people's music, to share your own. And nothing is worse than when you share something of your own that you created, whether it's, art or music, and it just kind of goes out there and nobody says anything. So really appreciate the people that comment on it, and thanks so much for listening. I want to talk a little bit about this channel in general too. I would like to do a little bit more of that, talk about my own music that I make and other people that make music on a much smaller scale. I think that's interesting. I think I've said it before that I think in these times that are just insanely dark and seem to be getting darker by the day, that it's really important not just to listen to music, other people's music, but to get involved in your own kind of creativity, whether it's music or art or writing or gardening, whatever it is. I think it's vital to lose yourself in something and maybe have something to show for it afterwards. I talk a lot about creativity in general when I'm talking about music, and I would like to talk about that a little bit more. It's of great interest to me. It's part of what I do. So I'm curious if that would resonate with people, just talking about creativity more. I'm going to probably start doing that a little bit. I want to continue to show records and talk about records, of course. I'm definitely not a guy that goes to record stores and just buys a ton of stuff and shows it. Frankly, I don't have the finances to go out and buy a ton of stuff like that. But I do enjoy going deep, and I do enjoy talking, deep into records that I have. And of course, listening to new stuff. I like discovering new bands. It doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to. And then, of course, listening to records by my favorite artists when they come out. Two of my favorite artists were once in the same band, the Drive-By Truckers, and two of the three main songwriters that were in the band at the time that Jason Isbell was in the band have put out solo records. So that's been interesting to listen to. And reading interviews with Jason Isbell, he does thank Patterson Hood as being like the guy that kind of taught him how to do what he does, which is really interesting. And you think about that. I mean, Isbell joins on the Southern Rock Opera tour, and then the very next record, he has a song called Outfit. You're like, that was the one I think that really put him on the map. That was the one I know in circles that I was in, seeing the Drive-By Truckers around that time. That was the time I became an uber fan on the Decoration Day tour, and with that album and the Dirty South, and from then on, frankly. But I saw them a lot around then, and people just were like floored by Outfit. It was such a good song. And other songs too, like Goddamn Lonely Love, that came up on my Apple Music today and just kind of blew me away. I hadn't heard it in a long time. And another song that Jason Isbell started playing pretty early with the Drive-By Truckers, he played a song called Dress Blues. And I remember he did this radio station appearance in Minneapolis and played that song, and it wouldn't come out for another album. It would come out on A Blessing and a Curse, but this was on around the time of the Dirty South tour. He played it for the radio station. I happened to tape it or download it. I guess digital files were still were a thing in 2005 too, or 2004. And I listened to that version over and over. I mean, I love that song just like I loved Outfit and Goddamn Lonely Love. And it was really, really those songs and maybe a couple others that were just, really showed what he was capable of. And then I always felt like his solo career, those first three records, I think, just didn't live up to the expectations. But then he got sober and he put out Southeastern and blew us all away. I mean, that first song, Cover Me Up, I think is right up there with those other songs. And there's plenty more on Southeastern that I would probably say that about too. And I've liked Isbell's records, and I think he's a hell of a songwriter. There are so few really good lyricists these days, I think, and I'm sure they're out there. I'm not always hearing them, but Jason Isbell is a hell of a lyricist and a hell of a storyteller. And so is Patterson Hood. And both of these albums really rely on storytelling. I think Patterson Hood's is a little bit more subtle, whereas Isbell's is very much, Most of those songs you can tell are directly about his relationship that broke up and the one that he has now, and maybe there's one song that's about in between. And then even the ones that aren't are still sort of that same kind of subject matter. So I find that really interesting. I've never listened to a song before by an artist that basically apologizes for his other songs and how the meanings are going to change because of what happened in his personal life. I tend to think of, you know, like movies where it's never like nobody thinks that they make a movie and somehow they're talking about their life. But if you write a song, everybody automatically thinks, oh, it must be about your life, which I think is a bunch of hogwash. But I will say I think it's definitely true in Isbell's case. I mean, you can just totally tie these things to real life. And at first, I wasn't that impressed by this record because of that, I think, because I like a little detachment, or I like things that are specific but also universal. I must say, the more times I've listened to this record, those concerns or those criticisms have gone right out the window. I probably listened to it now, I don't know, 8 or 9 times, maybe not all the way through, but close to that. And I also thought originally that that maybe the best versions weren't captured, or if he spent more time to get really magical takes. I feel that way a little bit. I do feel like maybe it could have been given a little bit more love. At the same time, I love that he just recorded these songs over a few days and just put them out. So many albums are labored over, and I listened to his last record, the one before this, recently after listening to Foxes in the Snow quite a bit, and it sounded pretty slick to my ears, So I don't mind that. I like the full band treatment, and if anything, this record has me more excited for a live Jason Isbell and the 400 unit record than I've ever have been before. I've found that a lot of those live at the Ryman records haven't been as inspired as I want them to be, but you have a whole new album of songs that could be totally transformed. I think there could be really cool things happening in the future. But I really like this record. It's a great one just to put on. It sustains the mood all the way through. And it's really nice just to hear a really nicely recorded acoustic guitar and voice. And the more, like I said, the more I listen to it, the less the specifics of their situation bother me, and more I get more into like the general vibe of it. And those, even though those lyrics may be directed at someone that we know or we know of, they also become very universal. And I love how the record is a celebration of new love. He's practically screaming from the mountaintop how happy he is, and he wants everybody to know, which is such a great feeling when you have that, like you want everybody to know that you found the one, you are in love. And it really balances out the record because, you've got these darker songs, which maybe don't sound quite as dark as they could because he's got all this light in his life happening now at the time that he was recording the record. So I've been digging Foxes in the Snow by Jason Isbell quite a bit. The other record is Patterson Hood's Exploding Trees and Airplane Screams. This is his 4th solo record that he's done. And I think he gets better on every solo record. The first one I still have a hard time getting into, although, to be honest, I haven't listened to it in years. Murdering Oscar I liked at the time. Loved Back of the Bible. I think that's a classic Patterson Hood song. And I really liked the last one, Heat Lightning in the Distance, something like that. Heat Rumbles in the Distance, something like that. Anyway, I really like the new one too. The new one I think is probably his best yet. It's different because the guitars are pretty much gone. It's really kind of stripped down with him playing piano quite a bit on it, and there's some nice string arrangements, and there's some guest stars on there, Lydia Lovelace and Kate Crutchfield from Waxahachie. And I guess he wrote these songs over a number of years. I read some interview where he said that he got a little tired of putting like slow songs on Drive-By Truckers records and then never having them really played because their shows are so loud, such rock and roll performances, rock and roll shows. I've been lucky enough to see the Dimmer Twins, which is Patterson Hood and Mike Cooley together, just the two of them playing acoustic guitars. And they play all those songs that maybe you wouldn't normally hear. And I love the Drive-By Truckers in a stripped down environment. I really do. But anyway, he's been writing these songs for a long time. They're all done, like I said, really stripped down, like a piano, and just it's recorded very nicely. I love the drumming on it. I love some of the strings on it. And the songs span a number of years, supposedly kind of loosely based on like his childhood and growing up to around the age of 19. You can tell some of these stories are more obvious than others, that they're about that time. I really like this record. The only song I don't like, that I think, unlike the Jason Isbell record, this record flows perfectly too, except for one song, and it's right in the middle. It's called Van Pelt Parties, and it features the band Wednesday. Great band, but they totally bring a more conventional rock and roll track sound to this record that otherwise is just so interesting, with the piano and the kind of mellower, almost spoken word sort of approach by Patterson Hood. Kind of makes you feel like you're in a real kind of smoky bar, and you're just, this is playing in the background almost like a jazz record or something. It kind of has that kind of take to it. Great stories in the songs that aren't always apparent. When I first listened to this record, I didn't like it at all, and the opposite with Isbell. I liked that one right away, and then I started to question it a little bit, and now I love it again. This one I didn't like at all. I felt, I was reading the lyric sheet, which is, I think, kind of a dumb idea, really, when you're listening to a record. I used to do that every time a lyric sheet was included, and I found a lot of times the records I liked the most were the ones that wasn't included, or maybe I read the lyric sheet later. And I feel that way with this Patterson Hood record. But great songs in there, and they've still got a lot of mystery to them. I'm curious to see him live. I saw him in it must have been like 2012 in Minneapolis on a solo tour with a really great band. And I'm hoping maybe he'll come here and I'll do that same kind of show, because this would be a really interesting time to see him. He's playing on the East Coast right now. But the songs that kind of blow me away, or that I really like on it, Werewolf and a Girl, I didn't like at all at first. I'm starting to warm up to it, starting to really like that. I think the last half of the record, after the Wednesday song, is when it gets really good for me. A song like Last Hope, or Airplane Screams, or even the closing song, Pinocchio. But Patterson Hood, man, he's a hell of a songwriter. It's not just the Drive-By Truckers thing, although you notice that even, like I said, even on the Drive-By Truckers songs, you see other sides of Patterson Hood besides the rock songs. But these songs, maybe for the first time, feel like they would not belong on a Drive-By Truckers record, just because they are so piano-dominated and just have a totally different vibe than their records usually have. But yeah, check these two records out. They're excellent. The last thing I want to talk about is a band called Sharp Pins. And I heard of them through a Pitchfork review. And, I don't think I even read the review as much as I saw the high score, and I kind of skimmed it and realized, like, wow, this sounds kind of interesting. I should at least, I do this a lot, add it to my music library in Apple Music, and then try to listen to it and see if it sticks with me, or see if I get all the way through it. Some albums I do, a lot of them I don't. But this one I liked right away. There's something very 90s about it. There's something very indie rock about it. There's something very Guided by Voices and Pavement, and maybe Liz Phair a little bit, and Yo La Tengo about it. It's like a mixtape of those kind of styles. And it's kind of like that Cindy Lee record from Diamond Jubilee, where it's like it plays like a giant mixtape. That one was for like some massive road trip cross country thing you're doing, whereas this one's pretty quick. It's just out running errands kind of music, or better yet, just working or having it on the background or making breakfast kind of record. But yeah, I really dig the whole vibe of this. I like that it is so versatile. I swear I keep hearing different vocalists, but apparently it's one guy. But yeah, Sharp Pins, their album Radio DDR. If you like those bands I just talked about, definitely give it a shot. It's been something I keep playing, and I'm digging quite a bit. So that's all I've got. Thank you very much.